I read my husband's texts out loud at our vow renewal. Now I'm 50 pounds lighter and breathing for what feels like the first time in 15 years. The weight I shed wasn't just the physical kind, though watching the numbers drop on the scale each morning has been its own kind of vindication. No, what I lost was the suffocating burden of pretending not to know, of smiling through dinner parties while carrying the cold knowledge that the man across from me was living a second life through his phone. It started with a notification. Such a small thing, really. A soft ping and a brief illumination while his phone lay on the bathroom counter as he showered. We'd been together long enough that checking each other's phones wasn't something we even thought about anymore. That casual, comfortable trust that builds over years of shared passwords and intertwined lives. The kind of trust I'd been certain was unbreakable. Her name was Lauren. The moment I saw it, something primal in me knew. The message preview was innocuous enough. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." But the flutter in my stomach wasn't excitement. It was dread, ancient and knowing. My fingers hovered over the screen for what felt like hours as the shower continued to run, steam billowing beneath the bathroom door. I told myself I was being paranoid, that Lauren could be anyone, a colleague, a client, someone coordinating with David on a surprise for me. But I've always been a terrible liar, especially to myself. I pressed my thumb against the home button, knowing his fingerprint wouldn't work but trying anyway, as if the desperation in my touch might somehow override technology. The phone remained locked, a black mirror reflecting my own uncertain face back at me. I set it down exactly as I'd found it and left the bathroom, my heart hammering against my ribs with such force I was certain David would hear it over the shower's spray. That night I watched him. He laughed at the same TV show we always watched, his arms slung comfortably around my shoulders. His fingers traced absent patterns on my arm like they had for 15 years. But now I noticed how often his gaze flicked to his phone when it lit up, how he angled the screen away slightly when typing responses. Had he always done that? Had I simply never noticed, or was I inventing patterns where none existed? Sleep eluded me. I lay rigid beside him, listening to his even breathing and wondering how many nights I'd spent next to a stranger. When the first gray light of dawn filtered through our curtains, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront him yet. I needed to know everything first. The code to his phone came to me 3 days later, accidentally glimpsed over his shoulder as he unlocked it to show me photos from his business lunch. Such a mundane moment, yet my fingers trembled as I committed the 4 digits to memory. I waited until that weekend when he went golfing, a Saturday ritual that guaranteed me 3 uninterrupted hours. What I found demolished 15 years in 20 minutes. Lauren wasn't just anyone. She was 26 to my 42 with sun-streaked hair and a body that hadn't carried and birthed 2 children. She worked in David's downtown office, not directly under him, which would have been too obvious, but adjacent enough for frequent collaboration. Their messages stretched back 7 months. 7 months of miss you, and last night was amazing, and wish you were here instead of her. 7 months while I'd been planning our 15th anniversary vow renewal, a romantic gesture I thought would rekindle whatever spark had dimmed between us. My hands shook as I scrolled through photos she'd sent him, nothing explicit but intimate in their casual domesticity. Lauren in a cafe we'd never visited together. Lauren in what appeared to be her apartment, a wine glass raised in toast to the camera. Lauren wearing his college sweatshirt, the one I'd thought was lost in our last move. I took screenshots, sending them to my own phone through a chat app we rarely used. Evidence collected with the methodical precision of someone who doesn't yet know what they'll do with it, only that they'll need it. Then I erased all traces of my digital trespass and placed his phone exactly where he'd left it, the perfect crime. That night, David suggested we finalize the plans for our vow renewal. He seemed enthusiastic, leaning over the sample menus I'd collected, debating the merits of string quartet versus piano. His hand rested on my knee, warm and familiar, as he talked about recommitting to us. Each word was a fresh cut. I watched his mouth move and wondered how it could form such tender lies, how it could press against another woman's skin and then return home to kiss my forehead. "I think we should write our own vows," I heard myself say, my voice oddly calm despite the storm raging inside me. "Something personal, something real." He squeezed my knee, smiled that smile that had once melted me. "That's a great idea, honey. Very us, very us." The irony nearly made me laugh, a hysterical bubble rising in my throat that I swallowed back down. There was no us anymore. There was David and Lauren, and then there was me, the convenient home base, the mother of his children, the keeper of his social calendar and family Christmas cards. I began planning then, though I didn't recognize it as such. It started as simple survival, waking up each morning, making lunches for our teenagers, attending meetings at work, all while carrying the nuclear secret of our imploding marriage. I functioned on autopilot, a perfect simulation of the woman I'd been before I knew. The weight began to come off without me truly trying. Food lost its taste. Wine, once a pleasant evening ritual, now turned sour on my tongue. Each pound that disappeared felt like a small victory, my body shedding what my heart couldn't yet discard. Colleagues commented on my new look, and I smiled vaguely about making some lifestyle changes. If they noticed the hollowness behind my eyes, they were kind enough not to mention it. Our children, now 16 and 18, were wrapped in their own adolescent dramas, too self-absorbed to notice the subtle shift in their parents' orbit. For this I was grateful. They'd know soon enough. Everyone would. The vow renewal was set for June 20th, almost exactly 15 years from our original beachside wedding. I'd chosen a garden venue, intimate but elegant, with fairy lights strung through old oak trees and a stone patio where 50 of our closest friends and family would witness our recommitment. Each detail I confirmed, the flowers, the caterer, the photographer, felt like another step toward the guillotine, but I smiled through it all, playing the role of devoted wife with an Oscar-worthy performance. Meanwhile, I monitored their relationship with the dedicated attention of an intelligence operative. I noted patterns in David's late meetings and client dinners. I tracked Lauren's Instagram, discovering she had a penchant for posting cryptic poetry quotes on evenings when my husband claimed to be stuck at the office. I compiled digital evidence with meticulous care, a growing arsenal I wasn't yet sure how to deploy. 2 months before the ceremony, I made an appointment with a divorce attorney. Not to file, not yet, but to understand my options. I sat in a sleek downtown office, 27 floors above the city, and explained my situation to a sharp-eyed woman whose compassion seemed equally balanced with strategic thinking. I'd chosen her specifically for her reputation of being fair but formidable. She took notes, asked pointed questions about our assets, and then looked at me with unexpected gentleness. "And what do you want from this, Rebecca? Not just financially, but for yourself?" The question caught me off guard. What did I want? Revenge, yes, but that was just the burning surface emotion. Beneath it lay something more fundamental that I couldn't yet articulate. "I want to stop disappearing," I finally said, surprising myself with the raw truth of it. "I've been vanishing for years, becoming smaller and quieter to accommodate his bigger life, his needs, his secrets. I want to exist again, fully." She nodded, no judgment in her gaze. "Then that's where we start." I left her office with a preliminary plan for after the reckoning I was now certain would happen. The knowledge steadied me, gave structure to the chaos of betrayal. I wasn't just a victim. I was preparing to be a survivor. At home, I began clearing out spaces. Nothing dramatic enough to alert David, just the slow, methodical removal of things that no longer served me. Old clothes donated. Mementos from trips where I now realized he'd been distant and checking his phone too often, quietly packed away. I was creating room for whatever version of myself would emerge from this crucible. The dress I'd chosen for the vow renewal had to be altered twice as my body continued to shed weight. At my final fitting, 6 weeks before the ceremony, the seamstress clucked her tongue in concern. "You're melting away, honey. Big day nerves?" I caught my reflection in the three-way mirror. Cheekbones more pronounced, collarbones visible above the sweetheart neckline, waist notably smaller. The woman staring back at me looked refined by fire, distilled to something essential. "Just making some changes," I replied, the same vague answer I'd been giving everyone. She pinned the bodice tighter, her mouth full of straight pins. "Well, you look beautiful. Your husband won't know what hit him." A hysterical laugh threatened to bubble up, but I swallowed it down with practiced ease. No, he certainly wouldn't. The plan crystallized one evening as I sat alone on our patio, a glass of untouched wine before me, scrolling through the screenshots I'd collected like cursed artifacts. The vow renewal, that public recommendation of love and fidelity, would be my stage. The irony seemed almost too perfect, like something from a film I would have once watched with detached sympathy for the wronged wife. I began drafting what I would say, words flowing from some deep, wounded place I'd never accessed before. Not vows, but their opposite, a public unveiling of private betrayal. Each revision became sharper, more focused, the rambling pain of early drafts refined into something precise and lethal. I practiced in empty rooms, timing myself, modulating my voice to find the perfect balance between dignity and devastating honesty. 2 weeks before the ceremony, doubt crept in. Was I really going to do this? Destroy our family's privacy? Subject our children to public spectacle? I called my attorney, seeking either permission or dissuasion. I wasn't sure which. "It's certainly dramatic," she said after I'd outlined my plan, "and potentially counterproductive to settlement negotiations. But sometimes the emotional price of silence is too high." She paused and I heard papers shuffling. "Just be certain this is about reclaiming your voice, not just hurting him back. Revenge alone is hollow comfort in the long term." Her words stayed with me, prompting another round of soul-searching. Was this just petty vengeance? The question followed me through restless nights and distracted days until I found my answer while sorting through old photographs for the Renewal's memory table. I found a picture from our first anniversary, me laughing directly at the camera, unguarded and luminous with happiness. I barely recognized that woman with her open face and unarmored heart. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being her, had traded authenticity for accommodation, honesty for artificial peace. The vow renewal wasn't just about exposing David's betrayal, it was about refusing to participate in my own erasure any longer. The morning of June 20th arrived with perfect weather, as if the universe approved of my plans. I dressed carefully in my altered gown, applied makeup that accentuated my newly angular face, and twisted my hair into an elegant updo that exposed the vulnerable line of my neck. The woman in the mirror looked like a stranger, poised, controlled, dangerous in her calm. My sister helped with the final touches, chattering nervously about the guests arriving downstairs. She'd sensed something was off but hadn't pressed for details, offering instead her silent solidarity. As she fastened my mother's pearl necklace around my throat, our eyes met in the mirror. "You're different," she said simply. I touched the pearls, cool against my skin. "I'm becoming different." She squeezed my shoulders gently. "Whatever happens today, I'm with you." I hadn't told her, hadn't told anyone, but somehow she knew. The realization that I wasn't entirely alone loosened something tight in my chest. The garden looked enchanted, exactly as I'd envisioned when booking it months ago. Chairs draped in white fabric formed neat rows facing an arch twined with pale roses and ivy. Our guests mingled, drinking champagne and exclaiming over the transformation of the space. I watched from an upstairs window as David greeted arrivals, handsome in his tailored suit, playing the devoted husband preparing to renew his commitment. The illusion was perfect. Soon I would shatter it completely. My phone buzzed with a text from the wedding coordinator. Time to begin. I took one last look in the mirror, squared my shoulders, and picked up the folded papers that held not vows, but truth. My hands, I noted with distant surprise, were perfectly steady. The string quartet began Pachelbel's canon as I descended the garden steps. Guests turned, smiling, murmuring appreciatively at my appearance. I registered their expressions with detached interest, already focusing on what was to come. Our children stood near the front, my daughter misty-eyed, my son uncomfortable but handsome in his suit. David waited at the arch, and the naked adoration on his face nearly broke my resolve. How could he look at me that way while carrying on with her? I approached slowly, deliberately, memorizing details I knew would soon be overshadowed. The precise blue of the sky, the scent of roses warming in the sun, the proud looks on our parents' faces. These moments existed in the final heartbeat of my old life. The celebrant, a family friend with no legal standing but a warm personality perfect for the occasion, welcomed everyone with practiced charm. He spoke about the rarity and beauty of a love that endured 15 years, about the courage it took to stand before loved ones and renew sacred promises. Each platitude landed like ash on my tongue. David and Rebecca have chosen to write their own vows. He finally announced, to express in their own words the depth of their recommitment to one another. He gestured to David. "David, would you like to begin?" My husband cleared his throat, unfolded his paper with slightly trembling hands. The genuine emotion on his face was its own kind of betrayal. How could he feel this and still do what he'd done? His vows were beautiful, heartfelt promises about continuing our journey together, gratitude for our family, acknowledgement of challenges overcome. He spoke of falling in love with new versions of me over the years, of his pride in what we'd built together. Tears sparkled in his eyes as he finished by calling me his true north, always guiding me home. The guests sighed appreciatively. My mother dabbed at her eyes. Our daughter beamed, and I stood perfectly still, a statue warming in the June sun, feeling nothing but the weight of the folded paper in my hands. "Rebecca?" The celebrant prompted gently, "Would you like to share your vows now?" I smiled, unfolded my paper with deliberate slowness. The garden fell silent, expectant, as I looked up and met David's eyes directly. "I read your text with Lauren," I began, my voice clear and carrying across the hushed space. The change in David's expression was instantaneous, confusion, then dawning horror as blood drained from his face. A murmur rippled through the guests. "I've been carrying them with me for weeks now." I continued steadily, trying to understand how the man who just made those beautiful promises to me could be the same man who wrote, and I quote, "I count the minutes until I can escape home and be with you again." Someone gasped. I didn't turn to see who. My eyes remained locked on David, whose mouth opened and closed without sound. For those wondering if there's been some mistake, let me be clear. I've spent months discovering my husband's relationship with Lauren Thompson, a 26-year-old from his office. I've watched them coordinate their meetings while he told me he was working late. I've seen their pictures, read their plans, tracked their relationship while simultaneously planning this renewal of vows that now seems like the cruelest joke. My voice never wavered. The paper in my hands remained untouched. I'd memorized every word, needing nothing but the prop to keep my hands occupied. Around us, the garden had become utterly silent. The collective held breath of 50 people witnessing a marriage implode. I considered many responses to this betrayal. I continued. Private confrontation, quiet divorce, dignified silence. But standing here, I realize I've been silent too long already, accommodating, understanding, making myself smaller to avoid inconveniencing the life you built around your deception. David took a step toward me, one hand extended. "Rebecca." "I'm not finished," I said quietly, and he froze. I promised myself I would say everything just once, publicly, and then never speak of it again. "You owe me this hearing at minimum." His hand dropped to his side. "These past 3 months since discovering your messages have been transformative for me. I've lost 50 pounds, partly from grief, I admit, but mostly from shedding the weight of self-deception. I've consulted attorneys, rearranged finances, and prepared for a life I never expected to be living at 42. But most importantly, I've rediscovered my voice." I turned slightly, acknowledging our stunned audience for the first time. "I apologize to all of you for this public moment. It wasn't an easy decision, but I couldn't bear the thought of one more performance, one more pretense. I especially apologize to our children, who deserve better than this spectacle. But they also deserve the truth, and the knowledge that their mother refuses to be disrespected any longer." Our daughter was crying silently, her makeup running in dark streaks. Our son had his arm around her, his face a mask of contained fury directed at his father. The sight nearly broke me, but I continued, determined to finish what I'd started. "David, I release you to the life you've already chosen. I hope it brings you happiness, though I doubt relationships built on deceit ever truly can." I removed my wedding ring, placed it carefully on the celebrant's podium. "I don't hate you. 15 years and 2 children ensure I will always care for you in some capacity. But I no longer trust you, and I no longer choose you." I stepped back, suddenly aware of my heart pounding against my ribs, the first sign that my calm exterior had been precisely that, exterior only. "I read your texts out loud at our vow renewal," I concluded softly, because I needed everyone to understand that what ends today isn't due to growing apart or irreconcilable differences. It ends because you made choices that rendered our vows meaningless, and I am making the choice to value myself more than an illusion. The silence that followed seemed infinite. Then David spoke, his voice cracked and unfamiliar. "Rebecca, please, we need to talk about this privately. This isn't," he gestured helplessly at the assembled guests, "this isn't how we solve problems. This isn't a problem to solve," I replied evenly. "It's a reality to acknowledge. And we're done." I turned, met my attorney's eyes where she sat in the back row, an unexpected addition to the guest list, there to provide moral support. She gave me the smallest nod of approval. Then I looked to my sister, who was already moving toward me, hand extended. Taking her hand, I walked back down the aisle I'd ascended minutes before. Guests parted silently, faces displaying every conceivable emotion: shock, embarrassment, pity, and from some of the women, unmistakable admiration. No one tried to stop me or speak to me. Perhaps they recognized that this moment required nothing from them but witness. My sister squeezed my hand as we reached the garden exit. "Your things are in my car," she murmured, "just as we planned." I nodded, grateful for her foresight, for the overnight bag packed with essentials for my hotel stay. The practical aftermath of emotional devastation, always so mundane compared to the moment of implosion. Behind us, the garden erupted into chaotic sound, voices rising in question and exclamation, movement as people stood from their chairs, the distinctive sound of David calling my name. I didn't turn back. There was nothing more to see there, nothing more to say. In my sister's car, pulling away from the venue, I finally allowed myself to feel the tremors that had been building beneath my calm exterior. My hands shook violently, my breath came in shallow gasps. "Are you okay?" my sister asked, concern etching her features as she navigated through traffic. "No," I answered honestly, "but I will be." The hotel room my attorney had recommended was on the 20th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I stood before them as evening fell, watching lights blink on across the skyline. My phone, silenced but visible on the bed, displayed dozens of notifications, missed calls, text messages, social media alerts. The digital aftermath of a bomb detonated in the middle of a shared life. I didn't check any of them. Tomorrow would be soon enough to begin the practical dismantling of 15 years. Tonight belonged to this liminal space between who I'd been and who I was becoming. Removing my elegant dress, I stood in my underwear before the full-length mirror on the closet door. My collarbones cast shadows, my hip bones pressed against skin where softness had once been, 50 pounds lighter, and yet I felt as if I'd gained something essential rather than lost it. I ordered room service, the first meal in months that I actively wanted to eat, and sat cross-legged on the massive bed, savoring each bite of overpriced pasta while scrolling through apartment listings. The simple act of imagining new spaces, new beginnings, felt like oxygen after years of slowly suffocating. Sleep came surprisingly easily, dreamless and deep. I woke to sunrise painting the city gold and the strange, lightening sensation of grief beginning its slow transformation into relief. The practical matters unfolded as expected, David's desperate attempts to explain, to minimize, to reframe, his eventual anger when he realized no explanation would suffice. Our children's struggle to readjust their understanding of their family, their future, the awkward dividing of friends who felt forced to choose sides, the legal negotiations that reduced 15 years to assets and liabilities to be distributed. Through it all, I continued shedding weight, yes, as my body found its new normal, but also possessions, habits, expectations. I moved into a smaller house closer to the city, returned to graduate school to finish the degree I'd set aside when the children were young, reclaimed my maiden name like finding an old, comfortable sweater in the back of a closet. 6 months after the vow renewal that became a divorce announcement, I ran into Lauren at a coffee shop downtown. The encounter I'd both dreaded and secretly anticipated. She froze when she saw me, coffee cup halfway to her lips, eyes wide with recognition, and something that might have been shame. I nodded politely, nothing more. She was younger than I'd expected, pretty in an unremarkable way, her expression betraying a vulnerability I hadn't anticipated. In that moment, looking at the woman who had been both catalyst and collateral damage in my marriage's implosion, I felt a surprising absence of animus. She hadn't been the problem, she'd been a symptom of something already broken. As I waited for my order, she approached hesitantly, clutching her cup like a shield. "I'm sorry," she said simply, the words barely audible over the coffee shop's ambient noise. I studied her face, the genuine distress there, the awkward courage it must have taken to approach me. "I know," I replied finally, "but I'm not the one you need to reconcile with. That's between you and yourself." She blinked, perhaps surprised by the lack of venom in my response, then nodded once before turning to leave. I watched her go, this stranger who had once loomed so large in my imagination, now reduced to human scale, just another person making mistakes, seeking connection, causing harm without fully intending to. My name was called for my coffee. Life continued, one mundane moment after another, building toward something I couldn't yet see but could finally feel forming on the horizon. David and I reached a settlement eventually, fair and clean if not particularly amicable. Our children, initially devastated, gradually adapted to the new reality with the resilience of young adults, finding their own identities separate from their parents' drama. I dated occasionally, cautiously, more from curiosity than need. 1 year after the vow renewal, almost to the day, I stood on the balcony of my new home, smaller than our family house but entirely mine, watching summer lightning illuminate the distant sky. 50 pounds lighter, yes, but the true transformation couldn't be measured on any scale. The weight I'd shed was the leaden compromise of living a half-truth, the exhausting vigilance of maintaining an illusion, the constant diminishment of making myself smaller to accommodate someone else's betrayal. I read my husband's texts out loud at our vow renewal. Now I'm 50 pounds lighter, breathing deeply, and finally, irrevocably free.